Every map eventually lies at its edge. A coordinate system works perfectly as long as you stay within the specific domain it was built for. This chart plots the early universe expansion rate against measurements from the late universe. The two trend lines do not reconcile. This is the Hubble tension. Yielding conflicting constants creates a vacuum in our understanding. Reality's most precise map disagrees with itself. The standard reflex is to assume we simply need better instruments or larger telescopes to correct the math. The persistent tension in these numbers suggests an alternative. Our current coordinate system has reached the limits of its operating range. When our most advanced maps break down, the failure reveals a boundary. We are likely not looking at the physical edge of the cosmos, but at the edge of what our local framework is allowed to measure. For centuries, human cultures across the globe mapped the universe as a localized, enclosed system. We see this recorded as a firmament, a celestial shell, or a cosmic egg. A modern lens looks at these enclosed models and dismisses them as a primitive misunderstanding of deep space, an ancient failure to grasp the sheer scale of the physical universe. Read symbolically, these enclosures describe something much closer to home. They point directly to the limits of the human observer, rather than a physical wall constructed out in the darkness. The firmament operates as a perceptual boundary. These ancient sky maps were actually documenting the strict edges of human consciousness, outlining the precise point where local experience begins and ends. We find this architecture repeating across continents. It appears in the nested Ptolemaic spheres, the geometry of Mount Meru, and the tiered Vedic locus. Rather than literal topography, these diagrams function as a compressed interface manual for consciousness, documenting how an observer moves through different reality layers. The borders define a jurisdiction, marking the exact threshold where one set of cosmic rules terminates and a new set begins. At these boundaries, ancient systems play specific roles. This is where we encounter Thoth and Mercury as messengers of record, Saturn as the timer of cycles, and various guardians stationed at the gates. These deities operate as celestial job titles. On a cosmic map, a messenger is a routing function for information. A gatekeeper is a verification protocol for movement between spheres. These archetypes describe the transition logic required to move from one state of reality to another. They dictate how the frequency of the universe steps down as it crosses from the infinite into the local. Myth serves as a highly efficient map of this boundary logic. It stores technical navigation data, jurisdiction, timing, and routing within the framework of a story. Alternative cosmological models often describe a physical shell or an ice wall at the edge of the known world. This shell acts as a strict frequency limit. It marks the exact coordinate where local physical rules stop applying. The space described beyond this boundary is often referred to as the extra-terrain. Accessing the extra-terrain requires a shift in the underlying math. It is a domain where the familiar laws of physical distance and duration lose their jurisdiction. Traversing beyond the shell is an internal shift. When the local map fails, the observer must adopt a new coordinate system to translate the experience. The macrocosmic dome we see mapped in the sky is a perfect mirror of our own internal biological limits. If reality is comprised of an infinite, roaring flood of cosmic signals, why don't human beings simply drown in the excess? Human consciousness functions as an observer safety architecture. It prevents systemic overload. The firmament acts as a rate-limiting filter. It takes an overwhelming environment of infinite data and steps it down into manageable currents. This step-down process is the exact mechanism that allows a finite physical body to endure the cosmos. It filters out the noise so you can survive the signal. The firmament is a vital biological filter. Without it, a localized world cannot be rendered. A universe lacking a conscious observer is an empty, unexperienced stage. The structure requires the witness to give it form. When our cosmological maps break at the boundary, the failure reveals the edge of a specific jurisdiction rather than a failure of reality itself. The edge of the shell defines the translation point, where raw cosmic signal finally becomes human experience.